Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 20. This is a revision session on unit 2 and unit 3, that is JavaScript and XML. Right, coming to unit 2, the syllabus, the official syllabus is short, but there's a lot of depth in each of the topics. So the material which I provided to you will cover all these aspects in detail. So the syllabus has introduction to JavaScript, elements, dynamic HTML. Okay, so just three topics, but as you can see in the material, there are a number of questions that can be asked from these just three topics. So one question, an introduction question, a basic question could be what is JavaScript. So you should be able to answer what is JavaScript. It's a language, but a bit different from other languages like Java or Python. So those languages are what we call as object-oriented programming. This JavaScript is not truly an object-oriented programming. That's also one of the questions which we'll see later. Okay, it's a prototyping language. But nevertheless, as an introduction, if they ask you what is JavaScript, you should be able to say a few sentences. So JavaScript is a programming language used mostly on the client side. Now you can also use it on the server side. Okay, so these days you are able to use a Node.js and other frameworks to use JavaScript even on the server side. But primarily, the popularity of JavaScript is more towards the client side. Okay, now HTML and CSS are languages we have already seen in unit 1. They give the structure and style. HTML gives the structure and CSS the style. Now HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are used together, okay, to make dynamic web content. So the role of JavaScript is to make web pages interactive, okay, and we will see. We already seen when we discussed about unit 2 the various ways in which we can make the web pages dynamic. We will revise today also. Okay, so it's going to add interactive behavior. So what are all the things you can do? So there's a separate recorded video on JavaScript code examples. So if you go through those examples, you'll see what are the various things we can do with JavaScript. Okay, we can show or hide elements. Okay, the click of the button, you can make some elements visible or hide some elements. You can change the color, background color, images. You can almost each and every aspect of the web page you can control using JavaScript. Okay, and then developers are using this to create interactive web pages and also mobile apps, and you can also develop server applications, though uh, other languages are more popular, but JavaScript is also capable of developing applications on the server side. Okay, even though mostly it is used to develop the front side client side framework, but even then it has the capability to develop server applications. Okay, then they can ask you what are the features of JavaScript. So these are all the features. You not remember all of them, at least a few you should be able to answer. The features of HTML, features of JavaScript. First of all, it's a lightweight language. Compared to other languages, it's very lightweight. Okay, then it's something called dynamic typing. So if you have knowledge of some other programming languages, say for example Java or some language, you have to define. If you have a variable, for example X, okay, you have to specifically define the data type, what X stands for, whether it's an integer or string, or you have to be upfront, be very clear what the data type, what the variable is going to hold. In JavaScript, that's not really required. Say for example, if you have a variable X, and this is something which I already did in the examples, code examples in the recorded session, we can just declare like var X or let X. Okay, we are not specifying what the data type is. Later, when we go into the code, you can X can take the value of 5, it can take the value of integer, or X can also take on a value of string. Okay, now that is possible. This is dynamic typing. Unlike other languages which use static typing, JavaScript allows dynamic typing. That's a very a different feature of JavaScript compared to other languages. Okay, then all these others you can go through simple points. Uh, this might be a new term for you, async processing. Okay, so this is a new feature that is introduced in ES6, though that is not there in your syllabus, but JavaScript from ES6 specification onwards has become more powerful. And one of the things that was introduced from ES6 onwards was promises. Okay, which enables asynchronous requests. Okay, so if you see most of the modern web pages, if you see a page, there'll be some sections and some some elements will get reloaded without you refreshing the page. Say for example, if this is a say a page like ESPN Cricket Info, or where you're checking the cricket scores. Okay, now there will be ball by ball coverage of the match. Okay, so when each ball is bowled, something happens. The score gets updated. The batsman's score updated. Okay, even without you refreshing the page, some elements of the page gets refreshed. If you observe, say for example, this is a score section. The score of the team will get updated. Okay, without you refreshing the page. So when you refresh the page, what it means, you are by sending a fresh request to the server. You're asking the server to get the latest information, but you're not doing this. Without you doing this, the page is getting some sections, not the entire page. The rest of the text same stays the same. Some sections, okay, will fetch the data from the server. Okay, and that is possible because of this is an asynchronous request. Okay, that is possible with JavaScript. And client-side validation, which we also discussed in the code examples, JavaScript is very powerful to do validations on the client side. For example, form submissions and all this, where you want to check some correctness of the code. It could be for example, checking whether the password is correct or not. And there are the minimum number of characters, whether there's a capital letter or not. Those sort of validations are possible using JavaScript. And also, client-side calculations can be done. This takes down a lot of load from the server. Okay, if this is not possible, for small calculations, you have to go to the server to do the processing. But here, within the client side itself, you can do this processing. Okay, again, arrow functions is a new feature. Okay, uh, but these are the features that make JavaScript very lightweight. Okay, so all these are the features of a JavaScript. Okay, event handling anyway will have a separate section that also we'll discuss. Okay, then client side scripting. Okay, they might ask this question: what is the difference between client side scripting and server side scripting? So a script, think of script as just a series of instructions, small snippet code. Okay, so now the terms which we come across is client side and server side. These are terms which are using in web development. Okay, so client side refers to what is happening at the client side. That is the end user. Okay, we the users, when you browse the internet, you are the client. Okay, so on the client side, we'll be using the technologies like HTML and CSS. Okay, the browsers will make use of these languages. So when you send a request to a server, the server sends back some information, and that will be displayed using HTML and CSS. Okay, so say for example, uh, if you have these websites. Okay, now besides HTML and CSS, okay, we use JavaScript. Okay, because JavaScript, as we have seen, one of the things that it can do is respond to events. We will discuss events later, but for these sort of websites, okay, where they have these thumbnails and all. Okay, so they have the number of movies in the web page. They will Each movie will be having an image, and all this number of information will be there. Okay, so each one is an individual entity. Okay, the information changes. Okay, and all this is possible only because of client side scripting. This information is, for example, if you are customizing it for a particular user, you can do it right at the client side. Okay, then there is something called server side scripting. Server side means what happens on the server. Okay, what happens on the server is usually the business logic. That's the term we use. Okay, business logic means, for example, if you're running a say for example a site like IRCTC, railway reservations. Okay, on the client side you can do all the entries. Okay, but when it goes to the server, it has to check whether there's a vacancy for the particular time slot, the train, the day. Okay, that logic is done at the server. Okay, that is server side scripting. Okay, so server side involves these parts: server, database, and APIs. Okay, so server is the machine which does it. The database, it could be on the server or on a different location altogether. Usually, it's different from the server. Okay, and then the APIs. Okay, how the talking happens between the different applications. That is server side scripting. And then the question could be, what is the difference between these two? In this table we have just summarized. Okay, what client side scripting basically done is it the front side. Okay, what the user sees, because the server side is the backend, usually the business logic. Now the languages you will use it for the client side are these, whereas for server side you will use more robust languages. Okay, it could be Java, Python, Ruby Rails. Okay, those are the languages, and the effect is The primary purpose when you do scripting on the client side is it reduces the load on the server. Okay, because taking a lot of the work which has to be done on the server, you're doing at the client side itself, it will reduce the load on the server. Here the effect is it will customize the web page and also implement the changes. And coming to security, this is uh, comparatively definitely less secure. I have shown you when we're discussing the class, when you visit a HTML page, you can just right click and view the page source. Okay, there's nothing secret about HTML. Any web page you visit, you can straight away right click and see, click on view page source. Okay, and you can see the entire HTML, CSS code. There is no secret. So this is not secure. Where server-side scripting is definitely secure. Everything is hidden. Okay, because that is more business-related information. Okay, so these are the client-side scripting languages: HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And what are the advantages of client-side scripting? These are all the advantages. Okay, first of all, most important advantage: it doesn't require going to the server for each and everything. Some some of the load can be taken at the client side itself. Okay, and then the disadvantages, of course, not supported by all browsers. Okay, so it's for some example, for some reason, if the script is not run, then the page will not. If your code relies heavily on JavaScript, okay, then the page will be of no use. Okay, and sometimes users usually have the browsers will give the users the power, the option to disable scripts. Okay, you might design a very interactive web page writing HTML, CSS with JavaScript, but the end user always has the right, the option to turn off scripting, the scripts. In which case, all the interactive what you run will not take effect. Okay, so those are the disadvantages. Though that is not recommended. Okay, nobody recommends to turn off the scripting, but still the option is available to the end user. Okay, so then how we add JavaScript? So this a similar question was discussed in unit 1. How do you add HTML? There we have discussed there are three ways in which you can add HTML directly. HTML we have seen you can add, for example, you have the inline code, the CSS. CSS three ways we discussed. You can directly add in the inline or within the script tag. Okay, or you can do in an external file also we discussed. Okay, three ways. Similarly, JavaScript also you can add both internal and external. This is how it's done. Okay, you can see the and all the examples we have done in the code examples. You can see how we are done. Okay, mostly we have embedded in the HTML page itself using the script tag. Okay, but you can also use an external file, in which case the extension will be .js. Okay, you can link an external file with extension .js. Okay, and this is where you will in the script tag you will write the name of the tag, the JS file. Okay, then one question could be asked is what is the difference between Java and JavaScript? They are totally different. Okay, Java is different language and JavaScript is different. You can go through these examples. Okay, this question was not asked in our university, but in other universities it was asked. So I just thought it might be useful for you to just go through these examples. Okay, then scope of variables. Scoping is an important question. So please be thorough in scoping rules. So in JavaScript you have three types of scopes. One is the block scope, function scope, and global scope. Okay, so these keywords let and constant will provide you what is known as a block scope. Block scope means within parentheses the variables which we declare cannot be accessed outside the block. For example, in this example, let is a keyword. Let and where are used to uh, declare variables. Okay, here I'm saying let x is equal to 2. Outside this parenthesis, whatever code I write here from here on, x we cannot use. X is restricted to this scope. Okay, so let will provide block scope. Within this block only we can access that variable. Okay, now we can also declare using where. I told you let and where. When you declare it with where, outside of this scope you can still use x. So where, with where you cannot have block scope. Okay, that is one point you have to remember. Okay, that is regarding the block scope. Then local scope. When you declare within a function, for example, this is a function by name by a function starting from here, ending from here. Here whatever you use, here for example there's something called a car name. Okay, car name is a variable. Now within this function you can use, like here you can use, but outside of the function you cannot use. Okay, that variable is local to the function. Okay. Now there's something called a function scope. Okay. Now each function will create a new scope. So variables defined inside the function are not accessible from outside the function. Okay. And then there's something called a global scope. Okay. Is outside any function. Okay. They can be accessed from anywhere. Okay. So these are the scoping rules. You have to be thorough. Then there is something called this keyword. This will not be asked as a 7 mark question, but say a 2 marks question, short notes or something. Okay. This is something, this is a keyword. This is used in many other languages also. Okay. This is a common keyword. You see it in Python and many other languages. So this means it refers to the object it belongs to. Okay. Again, it depends on the context when we are using. So in a method, for example, this could refer to the owner object. Okay. Say for example, consider this example. We are creating a person, a variable with a name value pairs. Okay, this is an object. Person is an object with having name value pairs. So first name is John, last name is Doe. Then you can have ID. Okay, so this is a there is also full name, and the value is a function itself. Okay, so here this person object has four elements: first name, last name, ID, full name. The full name is getting the value by calling another function itself. Okay, this is a inline function. Here you are saying return this dot first name. So what is this? Okay, here this here refers to the owner of the method. So here person will become this. Okay, so person dot first name is John. Okay, and concatenate with the blank space. So blank space and last name. Okay, so in this particular example, this refers to the owner of the method. That's the person object. Okay, it could refer, for example, in this case, it might refer to a function. Okay, the owner of the function, which in case is default by default in JavaScript is the window object. Okay, so this will vary. And also we can see in event handlers. Okay, when you're writing this sort of code, when you're clicking a button, something should happen, you're saying. Here we're saying this. Okay, here this refers to the button element. Okay, so depending on the context, this varies. Okay, so that is the this keyword. Okay, so how to create a JavaScript object? You can go through this example. It's very simple, just the initialization. And regarding JavaScript functions, we have used a number of functions in the code example, so go through it. Very easy. User, this is a syntax. You have a keyword function, then the name of the function. Inside this, you have the parenthesis, the parameters, and this is the code. Okay, but it is pretty standard stuff in most of the other languages also. You must be knowing how to define a function. Then there are a lot of inbuilt functions you can go through. If they ask you maybe some 4 or 5, you should be able to. A lot of functions I have given, but at least go through. uh, and some important, all you should be able to do is write the a short description, syntax, and example. Okay, like that for 4 to 5 figure. If they ask you write about some inbuilt JavaScript functions from this list, at least some 5, you should be able to describe what that function does, the syntax, and the one example. So say for example, this is a two fixed function. So two fixed will, so for example, this is the a number. After decimal, there are 4 digits. Two fixed will take a parameter. For example, two fixed 1 means this will turn to 177.1. Okay, so it formats a number with a specific number of digits after the decimal point. That is two fixed. Then you have a caret. That is, there is the character specifier index. If this is the string, you can say what is the character index, so and so index. Okay, so many functions, concatenation index of length. Length is actually a property, it's not a function. So just be careful. If you see the syntax, you see these are functions. Okay, length doesn't have that. See, this is str.length. Okay, whereas for others, all of them we are using, so they are functions. Length is actually a property. Okay, so this will return the length of the characters, number of characters in the string. Then there are some specific applications for text strings. For example, slice, you can extract a particular section of a string. Okay, slice beginning and ending. Say for example, this is a string. You can say starting from 3. Okay, that's the beginning slice. The end slice is -2. Okay, so starting from 3 means this is 0 1 0 1 2 3. So it starts from L. Okay, starting from L, ending with -2. That is, when the index is minus, it means you're starting from the end. So from that end, -2. So this is -1, this is -2. So that is how you extract. That is a slice function. Then there's something called a splice. Don't get confused with slice and splice. Slice returns to the strings. It refers to the, this is a function for strings. Splice is on arrays. Okay? So it adds elements to the arrays. Okay, for example, this is an array. You can use the splice to add an element. Okay, then there is join. Okay, substring, uppercase. Okay, those are all common functions. For each is actually a very powerful function. Okay, this is like, say for example, in this example, we're having a array, and on that array we are calling the for each method where we are passing a function. Okay, so that is where the power of this particular function is. We are calling a function for each element in the array. Okay, this is a function that you call on an array. So say for example, there is an array like this. This array you can call, on this array you can call this method, and the parameter you pass for this for each is the function. So for each element of this array, this function will be executed. Here this function is just writing to the document, HTML document, the index. Okay, so index 0 is the element is 12, like that. Okay, but you can do more powerful things. You can imagine what we can do. Okay, for each element of the array, you can write, you can as a map will create a new array. Okay, again, it will also take a function. Okay, for each element of this array, what will happen? It will create a new array with a corresponding. Say for example, here we are squaring the elements. Okay, so 149 is the original. You're taking the square root. So the resulting will be 1, 2, 3. Okay, for each element of the array, you're creating a new array. Then this push, pop, push, shift, and all these are operations on the arrays you can go through. Sorting can be done. Date, POV is the explanation, random. So number of built-in functions. Many more are there. So these are some important functions you can go through, and ask you just write some 4 to 5 examples, a syntax description, that will be sufficient. Then coming to events. JavaScript is powerful because of what it can do with events. So what is an event? Event in HTML, when we say event, these are what can happen to HTML elements. Okay, so JavaScript can react on these events. So when you do something to the event, JavaScript can trigger a function, can do something. Okay, what is an event? It can be any field. Say for example, it could be like, for example, web page has finished loading. That is also an event. When you have typed the address of a URL, the page is loading and finished loading. And once it's finished loading, there is also an event. JavaScript can detect that the page has finished loading, and then it can take an action if you have written a function for that particular event. Okay, an input event is changed. For example, you have a text box. You started typing something. Okay, that it can detect that. Okay, that something is being typed into it. Based on that, you can. That means the keyboard event, when you're clicking on the keyboard, you're typing here, that event can be detected, and then you can take a function. That function can do any particular action, or a button is clicked when you click on submit button. Okay, submit is that button is also an action. Any action you do with the elements of HTML is an event. And what happens once you do that? You can write the appropriate code. For example, here button, okay, is the element. Here we are saying on click. This is an attribute on click. For button elements, you have this on click. We're saying on click. Okay, you have to do this. What is this? Document.get element by ID. We have seen this in unit 1. Okay, so get hold of a element with ID demo and change the inner HTML. There is a content to today's date, the date object. Okay, so when you click on the button, okay, demo, for example, if you define demo as a paragraph somewhere in the page, demo is a paragraph. Clicking on this submit button will populate this paragraph element with the date. So those sort of things you can do. Okay, so event handlers. So these are some examples. What could be event handlers? So various events, as I told you, the HTML DOM events. That's an important question. Events and what are various HTML DOM events? So on change is something. Okay, so the syntax you should be familiar. Okay, on the element, here on change is equal to, in quotations you write the function. Okay, so we have seen radio buttons and select button check boxes. Okay, how to create using select. So when you change, for example, there's a red checkbox. When you clicked on it, it has changed. So you can write code when this event has occurred. On change, on click. Usually for buttons we use this like this. Okay, on db click means on double click. That is single click. On db click also you can do. Okay, so this syntax is this changes. Okay, on click, on double click, on change, on input. Okay, on input, for example, if it's a text field. Okay, or even a text area. When you write it and that gets changed, you can trigger a function. On key down, this is for keyboard. When a user presses a key on the keyboard, you can detect the event and take an appropriate action. On mouse over, that means when you're hovering the mouse on a particular, for example, this is a page, and somewhere here you want to detect when a user has hovered the mouse over this area, particular element. Say for example, this could be a div element, and you want to see whether user has hovered mouse over this area. Okay, that you can detect. Okay, that you can detect using on mouse over. There's a lot of things you can do like this. Okay, then dot operator, not a 7 marks question, just for 2 marks question. You should know what a dot operator is. That means when you have an object in JavaScript, object you having a lot of elements inside. How to access the individual elements? So name of the object dot that particular property. Okay, that is how we access. Okay, say for example here is an object with two elements, key value pairs. Key, this is the key, and this is the value. Okay, so in JavaScript, objects will come in the form of key value pairs. So cat colon, the sound it makes, dog colon, the sound it makes. Now, if you want to access a particular element, there are two elements here. Okay, you want to know what is the sound that this particular cat is making. So then, what you do? That object dot cat. You go to dot operator. So now you're going inside the object. You're accessing a particular element of that object. So that is a dot operator. You can also use a bracket notation. Okay, so bracket notation, here you in the bracket you write the name of the property. That's the syntax. So here in the same example you can say object cat. Okay, and there are some differences you can go through. Then class, you must have seen this in many other languages. You should be knowing what a class is. Okay, it's a template. Class is a template based on which you can create new objects. You can create instances of the from the class. You can create new objects. Okay, so there's a syntax. It's an example. You should know what a constructor is. Constructor is for the initialization. When you create an object, this constructor will be run for every new object you create. Okay, so then once you have a class, you can create instances, individual instances. For example, here car is a class. My car 1, my car 2 are individual instances of that class. Okay, so the car has two fields here, name and year. Now each and every individual car you create of the template will also have name and year, of course with different values. So car 1 will take on these two values, car 2 will take on these two values. You can have any number of cars with different values of the name and year. Okay, so you should know what a constructor method is. It's called at the beginning when the initialization happens. You should know what the methods are. Okay, this is pretty standard stuff in most of the languages. You must have seen this, how you pass parameters to class methods and all this. Okay, so go through this. So for and for each, we have discussed what for each is. Okay, when you have an array, on the array you can call a for each. What it does, for each and every element of the array, this function will be called. Okay, that is for each. We have seen this. For is different. For is just a looping construct. So for initialization, you know what a for loop is. Okay, initialization, condition, increment, and this is what the code. This is a for loop. Okay, then map we have seen in the inbuilt functions. Here is more detailed in it is given in more detail. You can go through. Okay, so map, what it does, it creates a new array. Okay, it calls the function on every element of the array and creates a new array. And now this parameters, there are three, uh, this current value, index, and arr. They're the you have access to all this. Now you can use if you want. For example, current value is an array. There are multiple elements. Okay, you're operating on this array. Say for example, right now we are at this element. You're applying the map method. So that function is being called for each and every element. Right now we are here. So current value will hold the value of the current element. So this will tell you what is the element you are currently operating on, or the index of the current element. Okay, so that will be used, that might be required when you do the processing inside. Okay, then there are operators. You can go through this, very simple. The various operators, just like in any other language, JavaScript has a number of operators. So assignment, mathematical operations, because these are the logical operators, comparison, everything. Nothing is new here. Okay, these are the bitwise operation. Bitwise means when you have say for example like this. Okay, bitwise operations, binary. Then you can do various operations like and, or, and all this. Okay, so those are the operators. They're primitive data type. These are the five primitive data types in JavaScript. Okay, so you can go through this, what each of this mean. Okay, then there is a looping construct, again similar to most of the other programming languages. All the standard loops are there: while loop, for loop. For in loop is a might be new for you, but this you could use in the case of objects. Okay, like this. For variable name in object, so this is the keyword. Okay, so if this is the object, you can iterate using for in. If it's a normal integer variable, you can use the for loop. Okay, like this. But if it's an object, if you want to loop to the individual elements of the object, you make use of for each. Then do while is there. Okay, then control statements. I'm not going through all this because you must be very familiar with all. Any other programming language will be having the same constructs. Okay, so you must be familiar with this. So I'll not repeat all these control statements: if else, switch, do while loop, for loop. Okay, then arrays and array methods this is an important question. So in JavaScript, when you have an array, we already seen the number of methods on which, for example, we have seen for each, we have seen map. That means on an array you can call some methods. So this section will give you the various methods. Okay, the important, we already seen in inbuilt functions there are some methods like join, push, pop. We have seen, so just go through. Okay, splicings, we have seen all this, sorting, reversing. For each map we have seen recently. There's also filter method will, for example, it will filter the methods, sorry, it will filter the methods that satisfy a particular condition. So if numbers is an array, you can use numbers dot filter and pass in a function. This function will specify the condition, the filtering condition. Here, this my function is saying return if the value is greater than 18. So only elements which are greater than 18 will be written. It creates a new array with elements greater than 18. So only two elements will be written. Okay. Then conditional statements, just like any other programming language, if statement, if else, if all this here, no, just go through. Input output functions. Do in the programming code examples, we have seen a number of cases where how to read user input. So we have displayed a prompt. Okay, you can use a window.prompt. You can also use alert to display some information. That's the output. Okay, so the various other options also. Document.write, in some of the examples we have used this. Okay, console.log is will not be available to the user, but you can right click on the browser and go to inspect. There you will see on the console. So whatever you write in the console, this is more used for debugging. Okay, usually we use it while debugging, not for the end user. During development we'll be using. Then different methods of converting string to number. So this function we have used in the code examples. Okay, so when you take an input from a user, say for example you have given a text box input, excuse me, there's a text input. Okay, say for example you're writing a function where you want to square a number. You're asking a user to enter a number, you want to return the square of the number. So you provided a form, you provided a text box, you asked the user to enter a number. Say user has entered 5. Now you cannot square it because this is a text. This is an input text box. So even though it's looking at a number, it's not a number, it's a text. You have to convert it into number. So there are various methods for converting string to number. So we have discussed here. So in our examples, we have discussed parsing. We have used it many times, but there are other ways also you can do this. So this section will detail this. I go through. Just like in array, we have number of methods. String also has a number of methods, and this is a very important question. String methods is very important. So all this you can go through. Very simple. Okay, concatenation, characters. Character means at a particular position, at a particular index of the string. What is the character? Okay, concatenation. All this you can go through. Search, split. Okay, local case, lower case, and all this uppercase value of. Okay, just go through. The callback function is a very important from a, even though it's not usually asked in exam, but it's an advanced point. But still, callback is what makes JavaScript one of the most powerful languages. Okay, you'll be able to pass a function as a parameter, passing a function into another function as an argument. Okay, so normally we have a function. For example, you have a say a square. You're writing a function square that takes a parameter and returns the square of the number. These sort of functions we are used to, where the parameter is just a primitive data type. It could be a integer, it could be string, it could be an array. Okay, but rarely you see of another function being passed as a parameter to the function. That is what callback function is. Okay, say for example, set timeout is a function available in this is not what we are writing. This is an inbuilt function in JavaScript. So what set timeout here is doing is after 3 seconds, this is milliseconds. Okay, so after 3 seconds, it will trigger this function. So what is this function? So here we have written this function message. So this message will be shown after 3 seconds. So this is an inbuilt function. It takes a parameter, another function, which you can write. So that function will be triggered after the particular time you write here. Okay. So that is how callback will be used. Okay. Then there is a syntax of JavaScript. Okay, you can just go through. Once you write a lot of programs which you have done in the code examples, you'll be familiar with all of this. You can go through syntax. Now, form handling, how to create a form. We already discussed this example in the code example. I think we have done the case of student registration. Forms you can go through. Okay, so this particular example has 5 input fields, and we have also done an example of code validation. You can go through it. Okay, so objects is an important question in JavaScript because everything in JavaScript is based on objects. So you should know how to declare an object. So this is how we declare key value pairs. Okay, key, call, and value. Okay, this is an example. Okay, how you access the individual elements. There's the dot and the bracket notation. We have discussed that. Okay, you can also nest objects. Okay, say for example, this is a student object having elements name, age, marks, and the value of marks itself is a nesting here. This is another object. Okay, the science and math. This is another object. Okay, so that is also possible. Nesting of objects is possible. Okay, so apart from string object, there's something called a math object. And you have a number of functions. You can go through this. Okay, a lot of normal mathematical operations. Okay, uh, finding the sign, the power, square root, absolute function, all the trigonometric functions, min, max. Okay, so all of these are available in the math object. String object, we have seen various methods. Okay, data object is also available. Okay, a lot of functions. I think in the code example we had an example where we have formatted the current date. We have taken the date and converted into string. There we have used a number of these methods. Okay, so this you can go through. For example, you can get hours if you pass in a date object on the date dot get hours will give you the hours from 0 to 23. Okay. Then there's a regex object. For this we have a separate code example. Please go through that in the recorded video. The code examples we have a regular expression object. Okay, so regular expression means we define like this with a slash. We pass in a regular expression. So various methods we have discussed in that example. Go through. So regular expression means it is pattern matching. Okay, it will search for a particular pattern. Okay, so for example here this is a string, and the expression we are saying is anything contains hi. So this is containing hi. This string contains hi. So this is true. Okay, so you can do a lot of powerful things with a pattern matching that we have seen in the code example. So go to that example. Okay, window object. This is the parent object. Okay, this is a parent object for all the HTML pages. So number of properties are there. You can access various. For example, you can see the height and width. This is useful for embedding other elements. Okay, then offsets and scrolling, everything. The control you can have a control on the screen window. Okay, these are the methods we have used. I think we have used alert. Okay, we have used prompt. Okay, set timer we discussed now, but there are the other methods also. So then there's a document object. This is a window object. Okay. Now this is the document object, the HTML document. So here also we have used some of the methods. I think we have used document.write, for example. Get element by ID we have used. We can use also similarly get element by name, tag name. So all these are objects on which you have number of methods. So should be aware of at least a few methods. Okay. So what are the various objects we have discussed? So you should be definitely be familiar with a string. String is very important. Okay. And they have the math object. We discussed about the regex. So these three you should be aware of, and then also slightly less important, but these are more important. But then also, if you have time, also go to the window object and the document object. So we ask you to write about the string object. You should be able to write at least 5 to 10 methods and explain what those are. Then a popular question is JavaScript an object-oriented programming language? Okay, so Java, C++, Python, all these are object-oriented programming languages. So JavaScript is not really it is not a class-based object-oriented language. Okay, we are still using classes and all, but there's a small distinction. JavaScript is actually called a prototype-based language. Okay, so this particular section you can go through. Okay, it has more detail than is required, because in our university in the previous papers this question was not asked, but because it was asked in other universities I just included it. So if you can understand, go through. Okay, so then there's a document object model. This we already discussed in unit 1, the HTML DOM. So here again we're just using the what is the usefulness of it. You can navigate through various elements, and the various DOM methods are there. We have used this in many cases. Usually we are using this method, but there are other elements also for selecting, for traversing, okay, for manipulating. Okay, so this we have set the inner HTML properties many times. We can append and remove, set the attributes. So these are all the HTML uh, methods, the DOM methods. Okay, using JavaScript, you are able to control all the HTML elements and their behavior. Okay. Then events were discussed, but this is how you handle the events. Okay, various examples are there, slightly in more detail. So the types of events we have already seen this before. The page load events, okay, a mouse over and all this keyboard events. So events is an important question. So even though this has got a lot of more a lot of information, you need not write everything, but at least 1.5 to 2 pages you should be able to write. Okay. So events, if they ask you, a lot of information is given in this material. What are events? The type of events. You should also able to write some HTML and JavaScript code how to handle the event. The syntax is pretty much the same. Okay. So you write the name of the event, for example, on change. Okay. So for example, this is a particular element. The attribute will be on change, and here you write the name of the function, whatever function, and somewhere here you define the function what it does. Okay, that format is simple and it's common across all most of the events. Okay, so what are the individual events you should be knowing? For example, if it's a keyboard event, what are all the keyboard events? When you press down a key, this key down event will be triggered. When you press a key, when you release the key up will be triggered. So each and every user action is being tracked. Okay, and then you can write a function to respond what to do. Okay, for mouse there'll be this is for scrolling. Okay, you're scrolling whether manually or through the mouse wheel also you can detect. Okay, whether you're clicking on a link. So this level of detail is possible to handle. These are all the mouse events. Okay, so you have mouse events here. This is the mouse down event, the mouse up event, click, double click. Okay, so just go through these various events, and you should be able to give examples for this. Okay, so that is regarding unit 2. Okay, unit 2, even though your syllabus is very short, there's a lot of information. You can be asked a variety of questions. Regarding application questions, I already provided a separate recorded video covering example codes. Those questions are exactly the questions asked in question papers of previous uh, in not only our university but also other universities, including JNTU Kakinada, JNTU Hyderabad. Usually from where the question paper setters will come. Okay, so around 30 examples I think we are discussing JavaScript. So just go through that video. If you once you are familiar with those examples, you should be fine with answering any JavaScript related coding question. So that this portion is given separately, not here. It's not in this document, but given a separate video recording, and all the files that are used in that example are also uploaded on Canvas. If you want to practice, you can also do that. Okay, so that finishes unit 2 revision. So we'll just take 5 minutes break, and we'll come back. We'll start with unit 3 revision. Okay. So now we'll start with the revision of Unit 3. This is regarding XML. The syllabus specifically mentions about document type definition. DTD is an important topic. A syntax schema is an important topic. Okay, these two are important. Then DOM is, there's a HTML DOM which we already discussed. There's also an XML DOM. So in this chapter we'll discuss about the XML DOM. Presenting, okay, that is XSLT, and process. Most importantly, the SAX is important. Okay, these are the main questions in this unit. So you should be knowing what XML is. So when we discuss in the class, we discussed what XML is. It's a markup language just like HTML, but it doesn't have any predefined tags. In HTML you have tags predefined. Okay, you have a list, anchor tags, you have unordered list, and all this they are predefined. In XML, you can define your own tags. For example, here there's a node tag. This is not predefined. Okay, you have created this to from. Okay, so in XML you can create your own format. Okay, so because of this, there will be a separation between data and presentation. Okay, so the differences between XML and HTML, these are the two. Then the languages used to represent data on the web could be one question that was asked just once in some other university, not our university, but these are the two languages. Okay, to represent data in the web. So how you represent data? One is XML, which you're discussing, is something called JSON. In fact, that is more popular, but that is not there in your syllabus. Okay, in JSON, this is how we represent object as name value pairs. Okay, so if you remember, JavaScript also defines objects like this. So this is a wonderful mapping between JSON and JavaScript. That's why JSON is more popular. Okay, it's very similar syntactically, is very similar to JavaScript objects. Okay, so because of that, they have a number of functions where you can directly convert JSON objects to JavaScript objects. Okay, but still that is not there in your syllabus. We're using XML here. So this is a structure of a XML document. Okay, you can give an example if you want. Okay, so usually everything will have a root element, and within this they'll be having a number of elements. Okay, so this is the syntax. Okay, so this is for small 2 marks question they can ask you. The syntax, various rules are there. Closing tag. In HTML, if you have observed, in some tags they'll not be open closing tag. You can get away with it, but XML is more strict regarding the syntax. It's case sensitive. Okay, so these two are different. Okay, it's case sensitive. Nesting of tags should be done properly. Okay, say for example in HTML, this will not give an error. This will still work. Okay, normally here it should be I. Okay, and then only B should come. But HTML will not complain about this. Whereas in XML, that is not allowed. Okay, there should be proper nesting of tags. Then around attribute values, you should be having quotations. So this is wrong and this is correct. So these are some of the syntax rules. So XML tag. What is an XML tag? So all these are tags. This is a opening tag. This is a closing tag. We can also have an empty tag. Okay, and the various rules are discussed here. Okay, again tags are case sensitive. Okay, and the closing in the order which I discussed, there should be, unlike HTML, the XML is more strict regarding the syntax. So various XML use all these are applications. Okay, in various domains you can do all this. You can write advantages of XML over HTML. Okay, that's a sort of an important question. So why XML is preferred over HTML. Okay, so first of all, as we already seen, there are no predefined tags. You can build your own structure. Okay, but apart from it, it's a tree structure, which means navigating will be more easy. Okay, you can control the appearance and presentation. Okay, that is the HTML. If you see in the HTML code, in some elements you are trying to control the appearance and also presentation, though you can separate the two using having all the styling in separate CSS information. Still HTML will allow you using inline styling, you can do the same, but whereas XML will define data separately from presentation. Okay, so manipulation will be a lot more easier. Okay, and these are the various other, and this open extensible in the sense that you can create your own tags. That is the a more powerful feature of XML. So all these are you can write, and then namespaces and advanced point. Just go through if you can understand it. It's basically to avoid conflicts, name conflicts. Okay, so say for example, if you have a table information, a table can be either referring to HTML element or a piece of furniture. So how do you know what is what? So here, if you use something a namespace like this, okay, okay, and here you using a separate namespace, then there will not be a conflict. Namespace is used for those purposes. Okay, then well-formed XML document usually asks as 2 marks question, not as a 7 marks. So what is a well-formed document? XML document is called well-formed if satisfies all the rules, the syntax rules. And what are these rules? These are the rules. Okay. Every tag should be having a corresponding end tag and all the syntax. Okay. Then there's a could be a question again, a short note question on simple element versus complex element. So this is a simple element. Okay. The complex element will contain other elements. Okay. So this is a starting of the complex element, ending of the complex element. So within this there are other elements. So that is nesting. So those are complex elements. Then elements naming has some rules. You can go to these attributes also. There's some rules. Okay. And how do you load and process XML document? Not that much important because you don't have a lab course on web technologies. Okay, if you can understand it, but otherwise it's okay. DTT is very important. Okay, from this chapter in XML, DTT is the most important topic. That is document type definition. Okay, so DTT will define the structure and the legal elements and attributes of an XML document. So any XML document will be checked against this DTT. Say for example, you can have a DTD like this, and this is the syntax. Okay, we start with a doc type that defines the root element. So here you're saying note is the root element. We are going to have an XML document coming later, not now. But here we're defining the what the document should look like. What are the rules it has to follow? So it should have a root element called note. Okay, so this is how we specify doc type, and then we're saying it should have 5 elements. Okay, so this will define element. So this note root, the node will be the root. Okay, and within the node there will be 5 elements. What are those? Two from heading bond. And if you see, we're also having the, for example, here it's saying element from. Say for example from. We are saying in brackets PC data. We are saying what should the element the data type of the element be. Okay. Whereas here, if you see node, we are saying there are 4 elements in it. So node element itself will be having 4 elements. Okay. So if you see, so from DTD point of view, what are we defining? We're defining the elements, attributes, entities. These are the character types. Okay. So each one is discussed in detail here. So what is PCL data? Normally XML parsers will parse all the text. Okay. PC data means parse character data. That means this is the text that will be parsed by the parser. Whereas C data, that's the character data. Okay. Character data will be ignored by the parser. So depending on your requirement, you can use either a PC data or the C data. These are data types in XML. So DTD elements, there are all these are elements. Okay. So when they ask you to write about a DTD, you can also give an example. So this is how a document will look like. This is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. So this is containing some elements. So this is a book element. Okay. This is a title, author, year, price. Okay. So this is a complex element. Book is a complex element. Within book, you have all these sub elements: title, author, year, price. Okay. And also category we're having. Here is a category of children. This is a category of web. Okay. So in this example, if you can write the DTD here. Okay. For in exam usually they'll be giving a sample application. Write DTD for, and they'll give you some practical example. Okay. Say for example for a hospital, or for a library. Like that they'll give some example, and you have to come up with your own definition. Okay. In this material, we also have given some examples. You can go through them. Okay, but you cannot predict what application they give. You should be knowing how to write up a DTD. Okay? And in DTD, you can be more specific. Okay, say for example, you can. What does this mean? This means the note element. Okay, will contain a child element called message. Okay, but must occur once and only once. But for example, if you say message plus, this means the child element message must occur one or more times. You can also have something like star, means zero or more times. Okay. Here we are saying question mark. Okay, it means zero or one time. Okay, so here we are having further control on the number of times the element can occur. Okay, that is regarding the elements. We also have attributes. Okay, so attributes are enclosed in quotations. Okay, like this, for example, person is an element having this attribute number. Okay, so you have to enclose this in quotations attributes. Okay, so these are all the rules. And regarding entities, they're used to define shortcuts to special characters. Okay, so and all this. Okay, then example in usually in examination they'll be asking what is DTT, explain DTT, what is the purpose, and all, and they might ask you to give an example for a particular application. So you should be able to know. For example, here is a TV schedule. Okay, so what does a TV schedule look like? Okay, so just come up with your own ideas. For example, they ask you about a newspaper article, newspaper. So you just go through the examples. For example, newspaper you have. What does a newspaper have? The number of articles. So many articles are there. So article plus we are saying. Okay. Then each article, what does it have? For example, this is an article. The article will have a heading. Okay. A small byline. Okay. Then there'll be a lead and then the body notes. So we are breaking up. Okay, the article will break into number of subparts, and each of this data type we should mention. So each of this headline, byline, they are PC data. Okay, then you can also, these are the elements, what it contains. Then what are the attributes for an article? What can have the attributes? The article, which is the author, who is the author, who has written this article, you know the author. Okay, editor, a date or edition. So all these are, you can come up, you need not by heart them. Okay, depending on the ideas you get, you can just, for that particular example they've asked in the exam, you can just write the whatever fields that occur to you. Okay, and there's something called internal and external DTD. Okay, already asked in previous years exams, so I don't expect this will be asked again, but you can just go through. So internal DTD means you can, how you write the DTD, the DTD which you have defined. Either you can embed within a document or as an XML file. This is internal. Okay, so within the XML document itself, we are declaring, okay, the DDD, or you can also have an external declaration. Okay, so here like this you define, and somewhere external to this you have the file. Just give the file name. Externally you have this file name. You can link these two. Okay. Then DTD declaration basic syntax. So already seen. This is just expanding on that. So four basic element attributes, entity, and notation. So what does each does? Okay, we've seen this already. Okay. And disadvantages of DTD. Okay, so one thing, so because of the disadvantages we move to what is known as XML schema. Okay, but DTD was popular for a very long time. Even today we have a lot of applications those run on a DTD, and there are some disadvantages because of which we are moving to XML schema, which we'll discuss later. But these are the disadvantages. Again, there are some examples, but these are more real life examples. This example you need not go through. This is again just for information. The level of detail, I mean, how complex real life XML documents are, this tells you. This is a real hospital. Okay, for a real hospital, this is what a DTD looks like. Again, this is all common sense. Okay, the DTD might be very lengthy. Okay, but you can just do it. Okay, there's nothing. Say for example, what is a hospital content? If you see here, hospital, the root element hospital is having the child elements. Obviously, it needs to have infrastructure. There'll be staff, there'll be patients, okay, history, reception, accounting. So these are the various sections. Now within infrastructure, what is the hospital infrastructure? What are the buildings? So hospital may have a number of blocks. This is a big hospital. Maybe they have number of blocks. So each one, if you see here saying wings plus, so each one is a wing. The wing A, wing B, wing C, wing D. So the infrastructure element is having child elements as number of wings. Okay. So what does a wing has? Wing has, this is wings plural. What does wings, the element wings has? It has individual wing, many of them. Okay, this is wings, this is wing. So you're breaking down. The infrastructure has a number of wings. Wings means number of wing, each individual wing, and each individual wing will have what, many departments, many wards. Okay, there could be a department for ortho, there could be a department for cardio, there could be a department for nephro. Okay, these are departments and wards. So what does a department has? Okay, a department means number of departments. Each individual department will have the name of the department, the phone number. Okay, department ID. These are all the attributes. So you can see how in real life they are getting broken down into. Wards will have rooms. Rooms will have room number, room ID, room size, beds, whether they're empty or not. This is you can see how they're being broken up in real life. This is how a DTD looks like. Very complex. Okay, but if you know the internal domain, it's very easy to write. Okay, so here there's another element called a doctor. Doctor is an element. Okay, so doctors means number of doctor plus. So each doctor will be having these are the child elements: doctor name, specialty, relationship. Okay, so again they have nurses and all this. Are this is how DT is built up for a real life application. This example you need not understand or go through. This is given just for information how real life DDD looks like. Okay, done. This is an XML document containing details of 4 students, and they're asking to style it using XSLT. Okay, this example you have to go through. So there's an XML document here, and how you're going to style it. This is basically the styling you know how to do. This is CSS, basic CSS. Okay, style for these elements, apply this styling. This part is CSS, this you know, but using XSL, how you're going to do it. So this information should be known. Okay, so this is the basic XML document. So this student uh, is having, for example, if you see each, this is one student. Okay, this question is one student. This is another student. This is another student. So each student is having a name, college, branch. So those details are there. So this is the XML document containing the data. So now you want to format this using some styling. So this is what the styling looks like. Then you can have a DTD for a cars. So these are all examples. Okay, so go through. This is an example of water information. Okay, so different examples. Okay, so water information. What does the water information has? All this. You should have the ID of the water, the name of the water, the address, the date of birth. What does each of them mean? The data types, ID, PC data. Okay, and this is the example, real life example you can take. Okay, so coming to XML schema also just like DDD is the structure of the XML document. So you should know what are the advantages of XML schema over DDD. These are all the advantages. First of all, XSD is extensible. We can derive new elements from existing elements, whereas in DTD we cannot do it. Moreover, XSD is defined in XML itself. Okay, you can you will see an example where if you see here XSD, the styling itself is in the form of an XML. Okay, so that is one of the biggest advantages. Okay, so in schema we have elements. Okay, so this is the root element. So like this. Okay, it can contain some attributes like this, and there's a simple element, and all this we have seen. Then you can have default and fixed values. Say for example, we're having a element by name color. Okay, this is the type, and we can give a default value. Okay, so if you don't specify the value, that will be triggered. You can have attributes. Okay, and then data types. This schema has this data types, all this standard data types. Then one of the other advantages of schema is you can use restrictions. So these are technically called facets. So you can restrict. For example, if you want to have age within this range, you can use some attributes like these are built in into XML, XSL. Okay, meaning inclusive and max inclusive, or a set. These restrictions can be on particular values, or it can be on a set of values, series of values like this. You can do pattern matching. All this is possible because of the schema. Okay, so earlier we have seen BTD for hospital information system. The same domain we are now using XML schema. Again, you need not go through this. Not at all required. It will be very lengthy. Okay, but this is how real life schema looks like. Okay, so those two examples for hospital, XML and BTD, you need not go through only for information. Very lengthy, but that is how real life XML schemas look like. Then what is XSL? So this is style sheet language. Okay, just like we have CSS for styling HTML documents, we have XSL, that is extensible style sheet language for styling XML documents. Okay, so in this we have these 4 parts, of which this is not being used nowadays. So let us focus on the other 3. This is XSLT. Okay. So if you see this particular example, we have a, I think this is regarding to a breakfast menu. Okay, so number of food items are given. This is one, this is one. So, okay, now you want to style this particular like this. You want the output to be coming like this. This is the name of the food item, the price. Those will be the heading in a separate shaded color, and the description will come here. Okay, so some styling. So this you can achieve using XSLT. Okay, so this is the XML data. Okay, the styling we are getting it here using this. So the number of constructs you can use. Okay, for example, for each is available. Okay, so what is this select breakfast menu? So those are defined in this. You see, the individual items are defined. Okay, and those will be picked up by the styling manager, and you can, for example, you are using a select here. Okay, you want this particular background, the steel background you want. Okay, so how are you able to do that? Okay, so here you're doing the styling. Okay, style background color is steel. Okay, you're applying the styling for each of these elements, for each of these four elements or five elements, for each of these elements. So how are you selecting each of these elements? That is, you're selecting breakfast menu slash. So this is going one level. So whenever you see this slash, it means one level down. So from the breakfast menu, go to the level food. Okay, so the breakfast menu is the root element. Okay, so from that, go to the food element. So now we are coming here. So for that particular element, for each of this, for each means for each of this, you're applying the styling. Okay, like that you can have, for example, you have value of, you can select the price and format it separately. Okay, this formatting is different from this formatting. The price formatting is different. So you can have that level of control using XSLT. Okay. In this examples, you can go to the example value of element we have used in this example. Okay, that is for individual selection. Then there is something called XPath. So XPath is, for example, you want to navigate through various elements in the XML document, you can use XPath. Again, this forward slash will take you one level down from the root element. Okay, for example, just slash will take you to the root element, that is catalog. From that catalog slash CD will take you to the second element. The slash CD slash price will take you here. Slash CD slash price. Okay, so that is navigation. Okay, then you can select particular nodes. So this example you can go through. For example, from bookstore slash bookstore will take you to the root element. Bookstore slash book will select all the books. Okay, that is the children of the bookstore. This double slash, okay, will select the book elements no matter where they're in the document. Okay, then you're gonna have also have predicates. Okay, so for example, bookstore book predicate one means it will select the first book element. Okay, already seen what bookstore slash book does. It selects all the book elements. Of this, if you want the first element, you can use the predicates. Okay, so XPath will allow you to select and navigate to the various nodes. Okay, so now we have seen how to style XML. We also used in Unit 1 CSS to style documents. So what are the how you are going to display XML instead of XSLT? You can also use CSS. Even though this is more powerful, you can use the plain old way of styling XML documents using CSS. This is how you do. Okay. So as an example, of books HTML, they have some individual books. Books have some attributes. Okay, elements, title, author, published, name. Okay. So here we want to do this styling, and you know how to do using a common. For example, for the books, you can have this background and heading. So just like the earlier CSS knowledge, you can apply here. Okay, that also is possible. Even though you have to be aware that CSS is not that much used for XML. Okay, we use the style sheet language XSLT. Okay, so here is an example display student data. We can go this example. This is the XML data, and the styling is given here. Okay, the output will be like this. If you want to get this output for an XML document, this is how you do it. Okay, these constructs are very important. How you loop through each element. Okay, and DOM. Now HTML DOM you already seen. Now this is XML DOM. Might be a difficult question because it's very lengthy. Okay, if they ask you, you can selectively write whatever you know. Okay, number of properties in, like you can have the node name, parent node, or the child node, the siblings, There'll be methods, get element by tag name. So number of methods are available. So you not understand all of them. Basic stuff you should be able to. Navigation is important. How you navigate to the XML document. Okay. So this is how you navigate. Okay, this is important. How you navigate from the root node, how you going to navigate. So the number of parent node, child nodes, first child, last child, siblings with these various methods. Okay. So this particular question is very lengthy. HTML DOM is comparatively easier. XML DOM, the methods are not difficult, but it is more lengthier. Okay. So if you can understand, go to XML DOM. Otherwise, you can leave it. Okay. But HTML DOM is more important. Then there is XQuery. XQuery is for extracting elements. It's like SQL. What you have SQL for databases. Similarly, this is just like that. You can have XQuery. Okay. So, for example, you can see here. Okay, this is extracting from the book's XML, going one level down to the bookstore, individual book. So it's selecting those books which are satisfying this condition, where the price is greater than 30, and it's ordering by title. Okay, so this is flower. Okay, this is the usual uh, the stages in which you go through this X query. Okay, for, let, where, order by, return. Okay, that's the order in which you do. Every X query may not have all of them. Okay, but if they are all of them are present, this is the order which they have to follow. Okay, you can do sorting also. Okay, you can do conditional expressions. Okay, so all of this is SQL processing. Okay, this will not be asked as 7 marks question. I think X query usually shortens 2 marks. That should be sufficient. Okay, actually your syllabus is way back in 1679 USK. Okay, the textbook, as I told you, the second edition is a bit old. It doesn't have all these modern features, XQuery, XPath. Okay, the prescribed textbook doesn't have all this, but still, the paper setter might be familiar with the latest. Usually, is familiar with the latest XML specification. So you should be aware of all this, even though they are not technically in the syllabus. XML processor is a very important topic. So what is a processor? So XML data, it will be parsing that. Okay. So of this, most important is a SAX parser. So SAX stands for Simple API for XML. So if you don't understand SAX parser, just by heart it. Okay. Of all the process, SAX parser is very important. Just by heart it. Very popular question, frequently asked. Okay. Then there's a DOM parser. These are types. Okay. So stacks, SAX, DOM. So the differences you should be able to tell, and this table will summarize the differences. Okay. So of this, the SAX pass is more important. Okay. So that will be parsing the XML file line by line, and they'll be triggering individual events. So just for, I think this was already asked in previous year's MCA paper. 2 marks question or something they have asked already. What are the advantages of SAX? Okay. We also asked what is the purpose of XML process. This sort of short questions you should be able to answer. Okay, so that is as far as Unity XML is concerned. So with that, we have completed revision for all the units. Okay, so this we have. I think on 15th September we have done it in the class, online class. That is done. So 12 we have done today. 4 and 5 already posted a video combining in one session. 6 also I have posted a video. Okay, so assuming your syllabus is 70% syllabus up to here. Okay, all this will not be there. Okay, so that will be your syllabus, but please make sure that this part your just confirm with your head of the department. Okay, for your first semester, uh, I think most of the question papers were set based on this rule 70%. So just confirm with the HOD, not for only for web technologies. Okay, for other five subjects also, just ask whether that rule is still applicable. Okay, because nowhere officially it is done. It's all through orally only. Or just officially, just request if they can send you the 70% reduced syllabus. Okay, if they can't send the officially that cut portion, that reduced portion, at least orally try to confirm. For the second semester also, you have the 70% reduced syllabus. Okay, So based on that assumption, we're stopping at here. We're not covering the other two. Uh, Orally, we were informed that that will be 70% syllabus for second semester also, but still, officially, on paper, it's nowhere. Okay, so so there is a possibility that you might be asked for the entire syllabus because officially nowhere it is mentioned. Okay, all of this is oral, so just maybe CR or someone can talk to HOD, just inquire whether for the second semester also you are having 70% syllabus only, and if possible, ask them to send the cut portion of the syllabus. And if they can't send, at least orally confirm that for all the five subjects, not for only our subject, for the remaining subjects also, for the second semester also, you're having only 70% syllabus. This you have to confirm from the HOD. Okay, so that is revision part that is completed. So now you have four assignments already. They are uploaded in Canvas. So 17th is the deadline. 17th is the deadline because 25th is a tentatively your exams will start. So 1 week will be having preparation holidays. So maybe 17th will be the last day. I thought so that will be your deadline to just submit the four assignments. Each assignment will have 5 questions, but you just need to answer two of them. Okay, so of course each of these 5 questions having subparts. So totally 10 questions will be there. Okay, so 10 into 4, 4 assignments, 40 questions. These 40 questions just try to give importance. Okay, I'm not saying though you'll be asked questions in the final exam only from those 40. Okay, but at least if you don't have time to go through the entire material, which is close to 300 pages, and it's very some if you don't have time to go through all that material, at least go through those 40 questions. Okay, it's very much possible that you might get questions out of those also, but still, instead of excuse me, you can those be covering all the important topics. Okay, so at least go through those 40 if you don't have time to go through the entire material. Okay, so just submit the assignments in time. That will be a basis for your internal marks of 30 marks. Okay, 20 for assignments and 10 for, we'll see how to plan this 10. Officially 20 is for mid marks and 10 for continuous assessment. We'll see how to plan it. Okay, so I'm ending the session here. Thank you.